Construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway and the decade following its completion in 1885 is perhaps the most interesting period in the Canadian Pacific Railway's history, the Golden Age. The section through the mountains of British Columbia, which included the mountain subdivision and the Kicking Horse Pass in the Rocky Mountains, the Rogers Pass in the Selkirk Mountains, and the Eagle Pass in the Gold Mountains, was the last section of the Transcontinental Railway to be completed. By the time the mountain section was being constructed, the Canadian Pacific Railway was running out of money. So this section in particular was built quickly and inexpensively to get the railway into a revenue-generating position as soon as possible. Blasting, tunneling, cuts, and fills were kept to a minimum. As steel was expensive and not readily available, and masonry construction time-consuming, the abundance of timber along the route was used instead for construction, including trestles, some of them massive structures. For example, the Mountain Creek Trestle in the Beaver River Valley was at the time the largest wooden structure in the world. The trestle was 164 feet high and 1,086 feet long and contained over 2 million board feet of lumber. Frequent avalanche areas required construction of endless snow sheds through Rogers Pass. But completion of the railway was important for three reasons. First, to prevent the United States from annexing the northern part of North America from the British. Second, to link the British colony of British Columbia on the west coast of North America with the colonies in eastern North America. Indeed, construction of the railway was a condition of Confederation. And third, to open up the Great Plains in central North America to settlement by European immigrants. The last spike was driven at Craigellachie, 17 miles west of Eagle Pass, on November 7th, 1885. To represent this period in the Canadian Pacific Railway's history, I have chosen to model the years immediately following construction. The Canadian Pacific Railway recognized that the wooden trestles were at risk of being destroyed by the frequent forest fires in the region. They also recognized that they would deteriorate rapidly and would be expensive to maintain. Shortly following completion of the railway, most, and in particular the largest structures, were replaced with steel and masonry structures. The late 1880s allows me to model these spectacular wooden trestles. However, I have also chosen to represent other aspects of the route in the late 1880s and into the 1890s. For example, many of the town sites established along the route were end-of-track construction sites, which didn't last long after construction was complete. It was the practice to tear down the town sites and move them as soon as the railhead advanced. Other town sites were established as mining towns, but as richer mineral deposits were discovered to the south, these too disappeared. It is difficult for me to ascertain just how long some of these towns lasted, or even what they looked like, so I have interpreted them loosely. Today, most are just names on a map, if even that. Using N3V Games' Model Railroad Simulator, Trainz, I have tried to construct a version of the Canadian Pacific Railway's Mountain Subdivision in British Columbia, Canada, so that one might get a feel of what it was like to traverse the mountain subdivision shortly after its completion in 1885. The Canadian Pacific Railway's 12,500-mile transcontinental railway was built across Canada between 1881 and 1885. The mountain subdivision was the last section to be completed. I have tried to place the track as best I can using topographical maps to create the terrain and A.O. Wheeler's detailed maps of his surveys along the route in the Selkirk Mountains in 1905 and 1906. I am indebted to Curtis Reed, Pencil 42, for permission to reskin his excellent locomotives and rolling stock of the period. 4 of the locomotives of the Virginia and Truckee Railroad in Nevada, USA, that Curtis modeled, were bought by Andrew Onderdonk, manager of the section of the Canadian Pacific Railway constructed from the Pacific Ocean up the Fraser River Canyon in British Columbia. Much has been written about the golden age of the Canadian Pacific Railway, the years of construction, and the decade that followed. Photographs are helpful, but still much must be left to the imagination. Construction of the mountain subdivision using N3V Games' model railroad simulator, Trainz, was started in the year 2010 using Trainz version 2009. The original version represented operations in the year 2010, when double-track and 100-car unit trains of grain, potash, lumber, oil, coal, and containers, with powerful diesel-driven locomotives, were, and still are, the order of the day. Then it was modified to represent the Golden Age, operations just after completion in 1885, with single-track and shorter trains, powered by steam locomotives that had difficulty hauling heavy dining cars over the passes. Over the years, the route was upgraded to newer versions of Trainz. Trainz A New Era versions of both the 2010 and 1887 routes were uploaded to my website in 2016. These routes are still available for downloading. See a link to my website at the top of this page. More recently, I have been upgrading the 1887 route to the Trainz 2022 version. In particular, I have been taking advantage of Trainz support for the new physically based rendering texturing that adds a more three-dimensional appearance. I have also switched to Trainz high-definition topography, which allows for a more precise contouring of the terrain. My 1880s Canadian Pacific Railway's mountain subdivision route continues to be a work in progress. For many model railroaders, a route is never finished, and that can be certainly said of mine. But I think it has reached a point where it can be experienced by others, initially as a set of videos that present some of the associated history. Hopefully, a downloadable route, perhaps with sessions, can also be forthcoming, so that Trainz enthusiasts can not only learn a little of the history of the Canadian Pacific Railway and its mountain subdivision, but also operate trains over the route. Recently, I came across another historical fiction, a murder mystery set in the winter of 1883-1884. The location is the end of track on the Upper Bow River in 1883, where the advance of the Canadian Pacific's Intercontinental Railway over the Kicking Horse Pass and down the Kicking Horse River waited for spring. End of the Line by Stephen Leggett is available from Amazon.